and a white woman historically has a certain kind of power, but she's a woman nonetheless, and she's up against like a, and I'm using up against for want of a better framing, um, a man, and what does it mean? What, men as holders of power too. So I think that was like an interesting kind of juxtaposition, I suppose, um,
Juxtaposition.
in this piece. So I think it kind of circled or surfaced that a little bit, but I feel like it's an important thing to kind of like bring to the foreground from that clip, how we're seeing um, race and gender kind of like intersect, and what does that mean in terms of like neutralizing power in that sense. So yeah, good job. I really loved this clip for what it could do in terms of what the course means. So thank you. Rachel has a hand up.
I also thought it was really interesting because I guess people don't know that it's the Wayans brothers dressed up
Yeah,
like black men dressed up and portraying white women, and a black woman or a black man in basically whiteface talking and speaking like that to another black man because it's acceptable in this group of white women and they have access to these white women. And let's hear for the Wayans family to be all in this because Kim Wayans was in Pariah. So that the family is very, I hold it like very culturally um important.
mhm. Yeah, agreed. All right, I see you getting some more love from the chat. Good job, guys. All right, let's see. So we have Isabel, Vita, and Ellen next.
I'll share the screen of the image. Can you see it? So, does it change to a different tab or no? Just the image, right?
Say that again.
It
Is it
it
only showing the
shows.
image, right?
We're seeing your Word document.
Oh, okay, so, okay. Okay, I need to, like, wait, sorry. It's just, like, I want to, like, share the image, but, like, also, like, need to read off on the document, so I don't know how to do that. Um, sorry.
You can just share the document if you want.
Okay. And I could, like, just, copy and paste the image if anyone just want to look at the image. Sorry about that. So the reason why we choose Frida Kahlo's Henry Ford Hospital is because Frida Kahlo is a very famous queer Mexican artist in the surrealist art movement during. He's famous to like, talk about like her sexuality, her body, and her experiences. And most of her paintings are like her self portraits. And then the Henry Ford Hospital reflects Kahlo's miscarriage, as she has like a single tear, as you see in the painting, and like she holds the pain in like her abortion. It symbolizes how like especially with the blood in her bed sheets and like the floating fetus, and then the female reproduction system diagram, and then also I didn't mention the document, but I read like one of like the websites. It says like the snail in one of the in the painting in the right corner. It talks about how like this process of the abortion is very slow and very painful. Like these images embraces how like Kahlo embraces pain and grief in her painting.
You're a little frothy. You kind of cut out a little bit, so kind of lost what
Okay.
you were saying.
Okay, sorry. This is my internet. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay. Um, So Kala embraces her pain and grief in her paintings, especially with like how the slow process of abortion, and then but even though like she's embracing her pain, she also embraces her eroticism through her the nudity in her paintings. According to Audre Lorde's, the uses of erotic quotes, erotic within our lives can give us the energy to pursue genuine change within our world. So not only do we touch our most profound creative source, but we do that which is females patriarchal and anti-erotic society. It is in page 91 in the article. The nudity in the art does not show like conceptions of nudity equals like pornography or sexual in women like in older paintings like by male artists. So for example, like if you see male art, the older paintings like the Odalisque or like the one like the woman like reclining in it with nude. I also sexualizes women in older paintings, but like with Kahlo, she like normalizes nudity in her paintings. And it's like she like normalizes it in a way like it's just, oh, it's just nudity, like there's nothing sexual about it. Like that's why like in the way like she uses eroticism to like empower herself as a woman. So Kahlo does not shy away with the subject of miscarriage, like through like her experiences, and then this is like she wants to impress like how her pain and nudity like empowers women in the audience, and like it also normalizes like, oh, this is how like women feel, and it's like and that's why like that's why Kahlo uses of the power of eroticism in her creative artworks to challenge the male dominant society and allows women to share their grief to empower them. And I'll go, and as you will, I'll go to the next paragraph.
So, I grabbed a quote from the Davis reading. The quote states, "Indeed, if women remained forever burdened by incessant childbirths and frequent miscarriages, they would hardly be able to exercise the political rights they might win." So the way I analyzed this was in the reading by Angela Davis, it talks about how women weren't allowed to express their political equality if they experience a miscarriage. But Frida Kahlo within the painting represents the feelings that she went through and every factor that played a role, whether physical or emotional, which I believe shows the strength of how she did express her political equality. Kyla shows the blood, which shows her pain on the fetus for which she lived and fought despite the outcome. This shows her strength and how she wanted to express her political rights, to express her body and pain in a way that repainted this political equality well deserved. Additionally, it also talks about women only being able to accomplish marriage or motherhood if they plan their pregnancies and limit them. I feel this isn't true at all. Women accomplish a great amount of success despite not having or planning their pregnancies. Women have also been able to establish their political equality without having to limit the children that they have. Frida Kahlo's paintings shed light on a struggle that all women face, as it often covered by those who don't want women to have political rights over their own bodies and their choices. I feel her work was part of the current drive that women have in our current day to fight for their rights and their bodies. Her painting could be linked to the idea of abortion because of the blood and the fetus. Abortion currently is an ongoing issue that women are fighting for because their political rights over their bodies are being edited and taken by those who believe they can control women and what they do with their fetuses. Frida Kahlo's painting resonates and sheds light on how abortion is an unexplainable and unimaginable thing that can occur to any woman, but the control for which they have to turn topics of such into something that expresses their rights or political equality shows the strength and the large role fighting has. And I will pass it to Ellie.
So overall, Frida Kahlo's Henry Ford Hospital represents transgressions of rules toward women in society in terms of how their citizenship is defined. And a woman's membership in society always has had a dual nature. Women have basic citizenship in society. However, citizenship refers to membership in a community, to which membership highlights the rules and duties of one in a given community. Women are considered members of the collective society, yet there are always rules in place that relate to women as women and not simply human rights. And in the eyes of the patriarchy, numerous times we've seen this theme where women tend to be regarded as the biological reproducers of the nation. However, this does not give them power. And through this class, we have learned that man's deprivation of a womb yields a desire for power, which translates into controlling a woman's body for national power. Several readings even outlined how sterilization was used to determine which women should be reproducing for national and political power to control the quote unquote quality of the population. Women are the biological reproducers of a nation, yet men are always seen as the dominant power figures, that being most heteronormative patriarchal nations. Thus, the failure to understand that instead of cleansing or using twisted ideas of eugenics to arrange the stratification of society, there needs to be a social infrastructure response. Deprivation of proper healthcare, lack of attention to all people in a society, and wrongful omnipotent power and colonization are what created these issues in the first place. So instead of trying to redefine society to only benefit a handful of the population, there needs to be a collective response to ensure the well being of all individuals. Therefore, Frida Kahlo's Henry Ford Hospital challenges the nation's societal view of women by empowering and inspiring women through painting her life experiences and struggles. And that will conclude our presentation. So thank you. But I would like to also pass it over to Gita to explain the reason why we chose this painting.
Okay, so the reason why we chose this painting, obviously, like Frida Kahlo is like she's very like special, like and also like she's very famous artist, especially in the queer community, and also like how she like in like the feminist artist. Even though like she doesn't like think she's a feminist artist, I believe like I remember like I read a few like before this class I made like a paper about Frida Kahlo, but like her paintings really like show like feminist values, and they also like inspire people, and especially like it makes people more comfortable to be like who they are. And it's also like the reason why we also chose this painting is also to connect with our like presentation from the for our first presentation with about like a women's role in society and like how they're like the reproduction for the nation. And then you can see like the cityscape in the background, and like how it's the contrast with like Kahlo in the foreground with like her like, struggling. And yeah, that's basically the reason why we chose. Painting is also very powerful because you don't really see that much paintings that feature like abortion or like female liberty with like women like struggling, and how and also like female artists like portray themselves. So it's like very rare to see like paintings like Frida Kahlo's. It also has like this surrealist because she's famous for like sort of surrealism, so it's like it also like have this like dreamlike quality that like people could like connect to. So yeah, that's the reason why we chose this painting.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciated your use of the uses of the erotic and making the point about how this is outside of like a pornographic gaze. So how do you normalize the naked body nudity and not make it like porn and to like use the source material in that way to set up distinction. I wanted, and you still have space to do it. So in Gita's final comments, you talked about like the city that's in the backdrop of this piece. I kind of like wanted a little more on the visuals. So like, what are the connections you're making beyond the body, beyond the feminine form, beyond the blood on the bed, and this clearly being something that is about reproductive health. Like, what are the connections that you're making with the other images or how do they speak to you? I suppose that's the question I'm asking. What connections, other connections are you making from them, if any? I'm just wondering.
Okay. Yeah, do you want me to like type it out in the document? I already sent you though, like in the email, or do you want me to just like explain it
Phone via
like
Twitter.
explicitly, like you're just doing the presentation? Is that okay?
Yeah. I mean, I want other people who will not have the benefit of reading the document to have a sense of what the connections are that you're making.
Oh yeah, like and it's like the cityscape, as I mentioned, like it also like represents like nation and like how it controls it. Like that's why it looks so bare. Like it just show like, oh, it feels like empty, and that, and then the visuals. I think especially like Frida's like the visuals, like how it connects to her body, like the red a string. It's sort of like the fetus or like the fetus like the womb, and that sort of like that connects to her like organs, it connects to like how her experiences, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it with like the visuals, because it's very like self-explanatory, and like it does also say like the like that's like the date where like when she was like during her abortion, but yeah.
Okay.
And then, oh yeah, and I did mention about like how the snail represents the slow process of abortion, and then like the fetus represents like the child that Frida was supposed to have, but she was really sad about it. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. What are there any other comments from the class or questions that you want to pose to this group? All right. Well, thank you guys. I didn't know this piece, so I appreciate you bringing this one in. I think I'd have to spend some more time looking at it as well. But yeah, thank you. And I'll be interested in also just like reading for myself your rationale. All right.
And do I need to like I really need to like add like the visual explanations in the document and resend it to you, or no? Are you good with like this question we had?
Yeah. I mean, as a part of how you're making the connections of it can be separate from your rationale. It can be separate from the course material that you're using to, I guess, make those connections, strengthen your argument, etc., etc. So I want to see in your one pager then that you're saying, for example, the snail connects with the themes that we're talking about in this way, the body connects. There's a cityscape in the background, and we're talking about sexuality and nation. We want to think about how government or the state in general manages, polices those kinds of, women's bodies, women's autonomy, blah 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 blah, etc.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, you sorry we didn't really include that much like explanation of the visuals.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. I don't know why I keep muting myself as I'm about to speak. Sophia, Runa, Kim, are you guys ready?
Yeah, so just a quick disclaimer. We chose two pieces instead of one because they're very similar, but they both have there are two topics that we wanted to bring up that were kind of each focused in one piece. But these are pieces by Theodore Grimes, who is someone I've been following on Instagram for quite a time. And initially I was kind of just searching the internet for anything I could use or anything we could use as a group. And I had taken a break and I was scrolling Instagram and I came across one of his pieces, and I remembered that he's an artist that really focuses on the experience of
queer people of color, and he tries to focus on the joys of being a queer person of color in his art. And I thought that was really cool and was relevant to a lot of the readings that we did, since we did talk a good portion about Black sexuality and specifically Black female sexuality, and then also touched a bit on queer identity in a few of the pieces. And so for my part of this analysis, I focused on Somerville's Queer Loving piece, which obviously goes over kind of the legal history of interracial marriage and same-sex relationships. And so there's kind of a parallel that's drawn between interracial couples and queer couples, in that initially there was a period where it was completely outlawed to even have relations, and then it moved on to relations between interracial couples are allowed, but marriages are not. And then it finally came to an end in Loving v. Virginia, where interracial marriage was allowed. And the same kind of path was followed with same-sex relationships, in which very clearly anti-gay anti-sodomy laws were introduced in the 1970s. There were anti-sodomy laws previously to that, but they weren't specific to gay relationships. And then those were finally outlawed in 2003. And then what wasn't mentioned in the Queer Loving piece was the 2015 Supreme Court case Obergefell v. Hodges, which finally legalized same-sex marriage throughout the United States. And obviously these pieces don't necessarily showcase the history behind queer relationships or interracial relationships, but they do each feature a same-sex relationship. And one of them is an interracial relationship as well. But instead of focusing on the negative history behind those, it focuses more on the joy and the kind of happy moments that queer individuals can still have. And then another thing that Somerville also discusses in her piece is the idea of compound discrimination, which because the pieces both feature queer people of color, that's something that if they were real individuals, they would be subject to. However, again, these images are kind of more so focused on the joys and happiness that can happen while free from discrimination, or while kind of in your own world, it almost seems like. And then I will pass the mic.
All right, so additionally, I noticed that this piece by Grimes is very much opposed to the historical notion and portrayal of Black women and people of color as overtly and inherently sexual. And this immediately reminded me about how different it is from how we learned about Sarah Bartman and how sexualized she was. And she was kind of just reduced to that. And I think this piece, in a way, kind of works towards undoing those biases that people over time may have gotten due to this awful history of over-sexualization. And I focused on the text by Hartman, Seduction and the Ruses of Power, because it discusses the historical negligence of female Black victims of rape. And it's proposed that this is due to the hypersexualization of Black women's bodies. So essentially, Hartman, as a refresher, draws the conclusion, or one of the conclusions, that Black women were continuously blamed for their own victimization due to being labeled and perceived as seductresses. And one quote that really highlights this is, the enslaved woman not only suffered the responsibility for her sexual abuse, but was blameworthy because of her purported ability to render the powerful weak. And this illustrates how much power the destructive narrative of seduction had over the logic of society, because it's very absurd that to believe that people came to accept that individuals that were stripped of their human rights were able to have this control over their white masters. And this absurdity illustrates the extent to which the over sexualization of Black women is deeply ingrained in systems and society. And looking at this art piece, which it deviates from that narrative, there are almost like no like sexual illustrations incorporated into the pieces, and rather it portrays a beautiful romantic love seen through the eye contact and like facial expressions in the individuals in the piece. And even the clothing, tattoos, and jewelry are more reflective of the like personality of the characters depicted rather than like serving a sexual purpose, I would say. And because of that, it does not showcase like unfair power dynamics of like seduction, and just focuses on like the love that seems to be shared equally, depicted through like the eye contact, the way that people like the characters are positioned in like the right hand piece, like slightly looking away, things like that, rather than through a sexual lens. And I thought this piece is important to share just because of the emphasis on the romantic aspect of love as well. So it kind of subverts from typical hypersexualization of Black women and people of color. And I will pass on the mic.
So these two artworks are also indirectly examined in Evelyn M. Hammond's genealogy of Black female sexuality through some common themes like representation, resistance, and empowerment, and also celebrating joy and agency. So in her work, she delves into the historical construction of Black female sexuality, which she has stated has been simultaneously invisible, hypervisible, especially in dominant discourses. And the described artworks that you can see right here is a response to this historical invisibility, as they prominently feature queer people of color engaging in purely romantic and joyful moments. And by doing so, the artist kind of challenges and redefines prevailing stereotypes about Black female sexuality and replacing them with images of love, intimacy, and joy. And Hammond's genealogy also emphasizes the importance of recognizing and affirming this joy and agency that's in Black women's sexuality. This aligns with this theme by showcasing the tender and intimate moments between these two couples, conveying a sense of this emotional connection. As you can see, like they're very close together. It's just very purely just intimate. And Hammond's work also highlights how Black women have historically been subjected to negative stereotypes about their sexuality and how these material effects of these stereotypes have on their lives. So the artwork can be seen as a form of resistance and empowerment as it counters these harmful stereotypes while also offering a positive and authentic representation of their sexuality. So in summary, the artwork really discusses contributes to the broader discussion of Black female sexuality by challenging the historical invisibility, celebrating joy and agency, while also resisting the harmful stereotypes. And these representations really add depth and nuance to the understanding of the experiences of queer people of color and promoting a more inclusive and accurate portrayal of Black female sexuality in contemporary art.
Alright, and here's our works cited if anyone was curious about our text from the class.
Thank you. You got that? Can you jump in?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. So I love this piece as resistance. I love the connections to the source material that you're citing. And I love the ways you talked about, you know, kind of historical, both invisibility and, I guess, hyper visibility in the same sense. But can you go back to the slide with the actual art? Something I wanted to, and maybe it's just me as somebody who is Black. I know there's a way we lump like people of color, but I do. Can you go back to the slide that has the art, please? You guys hear me? Hello? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. I think Aruna is probably not present right now. Me.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted us to take a minute. And
Yeah, hi, sorry. My Zoom completely froze up and I couldn't do anything, so I had to leave the Zoom and come back. I can go back to that slide right now. Oh. Actually.
And so art is interpretation, right? So it's bear with me. It's, I guess, what the individual takes from the piece, if not the intention of the artist. And so, but as somebody who is Black, I feel like there is a way when we say people of color, that added layer of discrimination and invisibility that Black bodies, Black people face as distinct from other people of color also gets erased or more invisibilized, I feel. It's not because anti-Blackness is at the
Hey guys, how's it going? So,
of
MLNG just came
discrimination
along with a couple of balance changes, but most of them kind of sucked, but we got Mort and Lionheart Cermia, which were kind of nice. But let's focus on MLND, because that's what I care about, that's what you care about, that's what everyone cares about. Nobody cares about Mort and Lionheart Cermia. Let's forget them. So, this is my Navy Captain Landy. You'll notice triple S, because I used 5 slates on her, because I had 18 slates, because I never use those things, because I'm a weird hoarder. Realistically, her imprint is not that important. She would have like 2,700 something attack without it. Not that big of a difference. I would say Elbrus is her best artifact. If you don't have it, maybe Mature Sunglasses would be the secondary, but I think Elbrus is really useful, especially against AoEs to get those counterattacks. I'm currently using her on counter set. I think it could be interesting to try a lifesteal set. Plus 15 of this, he's on Grace of Growth, he's missing 5 crit chance. Yeah, he's got no imprints. This is my incredibly relatable free-to-play Mort. From pre-buff to post-buff now.
That immediately makes me
I'll definitely say the Sierra push is making a pretty nice impact in matches. I think that her S3 extra damage that they promised,
you know what I mean?
we didn't really get a whole lot this patch, but
exposure of her body that I feel is very different from the way
oh wait, they used it on Shiro. Oh, okay.
And then I'm just like,
we don't have any sort of cleanse, so she's gonna get like perma-stunned, isn't she?
And holding her in a way that for me there was a power.
Oh, is he just gonna S3 me?
To that, I feel.
Just go full ape mode, probably.
When we're looking at couples,
if Landy gets a counter off that, that would be really nice, though.
With more power is behind.
Yeah.
And so,
oh boy. Let's see what happens. It took a while. Maybe something good's gonna happen?
Wrong with your interpretation.
No counterattack. I have counter set and a plus 27 Elbrus. No counterattack.
So I guess my point is
3 19% and a 30%. Okay, well.
I feel like there is a way certain.
That's a little bit awkward.
things.
I hope my anti-crit does something.
Through an image.
It doesn't, and then they steal my anti-crit and push up with a dual attack?
Axes of difference that
They push up over my immunity giver.
Shade as a part of how we're thinking about race and sexuality.
Bro.
And then I think the same would be
You are
true
actually
in the
out of your
other
mind right now.
where the shades are again.
He
are very
pushed
different.
up over my Last
and
Rider
I'm seeing the
brow
darker skinned woman
because he dueled
legs in a particular
and stole it. It's not even a 100% chance to steal it. Well, actually, he still had buffs anyway, so it would have worked. Would have pushed up.
Or the ways
It's done that?
making a kind of
Okay.
social commentary on that kind of historical invisibility and throwing where
This could be kind of rough.
into the
I don't like giving
center
Edward immunity, but it doesn't really
of
matter at this point, I feel.
sexuality.
Okay, mischance. Ooh, counter? Okay. Ooh, big damage, actually. Okay,
some of the very things.
yeah,
that the
mischance
piece,
not working.
obviously
A little
is,
unfortunate.
Created to kind
Oh
of
my
like
god, what did she just scream?
destabilize.
I will land you
And
just
again,
screamed something
it's
out
probably
loud.
entirely me. But yeah, I just add that one layer to the analysis. Anybody else with any thoughts about what I'm saying? Any feedback on what I'm saying? Or
I think
I feel
what
like
you
we might
mentioned
be
is,
okay.
colorism, because that's also very
I don't know,
prevalent
because
in,
people build
East
effectiveness
Asian
on her, not a
countries,
ton
how,
of
like,
damage.
East
Oh my
Asian,
god, wait,
especially
we're popping
lighter skin
off.
Asians are like more preferred.
If we get a
in
counterattack
media
here,
rather
this
than,
guy's
like,
literally just instantly dead.
Rather like
And he knows
darker
it.
skin Asian.
If we get a
especially,
counterattack,
Asia,
that would be insane.
like I remember
He's
like, I
lagging
used to
out.
live
He's
in
so
India,
scared he pulled the
like,
plug.
most of like the commercials are like,
Mama, plug the
they have
internet!
like lighter
Check out the
skin,
damage.
Asians, but like
I can't be
they
stunned,
don't really consider that much
scum!
of the darker skins.
Heave
And then,
anchor!
like,
Oh,
as I grew up,
baby!
like most people like
Check out the
prefer,
damage.
like,
Frenzy
lighter
1.
skin.
Let's see how much
And
damage
they
you do
were like,
Frenzy
oh,
1.
like you're very, like they always call me as like, oh, you're very light in that, and like, oh, okay, I don't know like what's the reason behind it, and I was like, oh, it's like a
Who
preference.
said her damage
And
was
then I
low?
feel so sorry because as a kid, like I want to be like the same skin tone as like darker skin one, but like I mean, I have like this weird
Wonder how much effectiveness they have, because I have
Like, I feel
280
like
FRES.
being different
So
in
I
body,
hope I'm okay.
people, like just seeing like, oh, they see
Ooh,
that as,
that's a
like,
good sign.
like,
Resistance
like,
from the
fascinated-
start.
People are just fascinated like with people with lighter skin tones.
You know
I think
what?
that's like how it is. Like,
Fine.
like,
You stun me?
Like,
Fine.
not really
I'll
most
take
Asian
it.
countries. Like I know, like it's like very prevalent, especially
Landy
in India,
doesn't
how,
care
like,
about
they always
that.
portray a lighter skin,
Okay, we didn't
And,
get Salvo.
and
A little sad, but that's fine.
then we don't really show
Can't win
that
them all.
much the darker skin shades.
Hopefully
I
anti-crit
hear you.
helps us out a little bit here.
Anybody else wants to jump?
Okay, ow. Maybe it doesn't?
I do just want to add that that is definitely a very interesting
Surely we don't
analysis.
get crit with 70
and
anti-crit.
that's
It's just
something
like
that
you,
was
Aiden. We are the
noticed
same.
while we were
Four
analyzing the
damage,
pieces. But if it does
that's
give
what
any
I thought.
context, the artist himself is
Yes,
like a fairly
stun
dark-skinned
my
black
Landy.
man.
No, he's gonna stun me. I'm not gonna be able to do any damage
and
now.
He does have pieces where the power differentials are kind of
Four.
differently placed,
Alright, we stun this thing because nobody actually likes this character.
or the colorism.
Okay, we're
wouldn't
not
be
gonna stun it
so
because
obvious,
nobody
but these were
likes
the two
this game.
pieces we happened to choose.
We're gonna get
because they were both
bombed.
kind of similar in theme and nature.
Wait, he still has
And
this. I
mean,
forgot.
I'm not even saying it's.
Wait, that's fine. Wait, we don't care about that.
necessarily, I'm just saying.
Yeah, what are you gonna do?
It's
Huh? What are you gonna do?
It definitely is complicated.
Oh, they pushed me back. Okay, well they're gonna do that, which I don't really like, but I think this is fine, right?
Keep those added
My look is pretty good.
layers of different.
Now we got ice cream, defense buff. I'm liking this. I'm not using the PC version. I'm gonna try it tomorrow.
How racialization works.
Okay.
Because it's not just at the
Wow,
level
this
of,
lag is intense.
um,
Really adds a
you know,
lot of suspense.
ethnicity or race or whatever, but it's also
Bro,
within
you hit me
these
and
groups.
stole my buff.
How does anti-blackness
Can you, like, never do that again,
structure,
please?
different kinds of relationships?
Okay, anti-crit working. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
my
so
counter
I
chance
think
is not working.
That's just And then power.
Can you please
also,
counter? Please, I'm begging you.
along a kind of
I'm not asking for that
gender
much. I have Elbrus and counter set.
axis again, because I don't know, in the second frame,
Um.
I'm
Wow, them doing
reading
defense buff makes this really rough, actually.
lighter-skinned body
Okay, you're
in
gonna
a
do
more
2
masculine
attacks here.
way.
Surely we get. Okay, awesome. Counterattack. Can we get a
But
salvo?
I'm seeing that body in a more masculine way. I'm seeing
No?
the darker
Okay.
skinned woman as more feminized, but as I'm seeing the more masculine
Damn.
body.
Wait, she said she's mine out loud. Was she? Wait, did she say that when you're fighting against Pirate Captain Flan?
that person also
Did she yell,
seems to
"She's
be
mine"? That would be really cool if so. Yes, that's
I
sick.
don't know. Yeah, controlling the other
I did
person,
not want to hit Aiden there.
you
That's
know,
kind of bad.
stance or position by the placement
That's really
of their
cool.
hand in
I like that
way,
interaction.
kind of like a pulling toward. So yeah, it is romantic, I suppose.
If Landy
As
counters
opposed to, like,
here,
overtly kind of
that would be really
sexual.
swell.
But
Oh crap!
for me, there is still that.
Can we still counter and get a salvo, please? Wait, miss.
And to your point.
Oh my god, that
about
actually
artists
helped me.
being,
And because
dark
Spectre
skin
Tenebria
black
missed on her before, there's no way they have
again, I'm
S3.
not saying because I
Or
don't know
S2
their
rather.
work. I don't know their intention, I don't know their work, but just making the point.
She
that
said you're gonna.
even for
Okay.
us, there can still be that kind of bias.
She said you're gonna. My greatest shame die. That's so cool. Wait, they actually have like more ML speech. That's so cool. What the hell? Oh, she got crit. Wait, but she's still alive. Oh my god, she's still alive. That's so cool. She said you're my greatest shame, die. That's awesome. I actually really like the extra flavor stuff there. The Flava Flav.
So yeah.
This guy's done so. I actually just went. Like, how's this thing gonna win?
Sorry. The first thing I noticed, and I'm grateful to have the two pieces together, because I
Is there
noticed
any
the
rule-
first one with the darker skinned black woman is
You can
the
check that on your
hair
own time, buddy.
and how it's
Oh, it doesn't
Eurocentric
even
and
matter.
it's nighttime, and I don't think
You got
if
crit
I
twice in a
didn't
row,
have
but
that
it doesn't even
second
matter at this point. Who
painting,
cares? Who asked?
I think I would have
This guy's a
been
real
more
fighter, huh?
critical of that first
Okay,
one,
that was pretty
about
sick.
what you were saying about
Okay,
the
so
power position and the slit up the skirt and the it's just I mean it's something about
what is that? My health bar,
her
bro.
being dark skinned and
All right, that hurts. They
The
actually have
red
an immunity
eyes,
landy, and it has some
and
speed to
at
it. It has like
nighttime,
180
and it's kind of-
speed or so.
it kind of
180,
feels-
190. It's pretty
feels
fast.
I feel some type of way about it.
Probably pretty squishy then,
So,
right?
but the other
Wow, you're actually
the
good at
other one,
S3 right now?
it's a little more
I am going
it makes
to
me feel
do
a
this
little
and strip
more
all your
comfortable.
buffs, 100% of your buffs, please.
and I don't know if it's because
All
of
of
the
them?
breeds or because of the
Nice.
representation.
Well, there goes your
But
buffs. Oh, attack buff more is
I understand what you're
crazy.
saying about
No way.
the power position.
But isn't this guy like basically dead? Am I crazy or is my opponent basically dead?
I mean, I love the presentation, so I don't want you to have any negative feelings, group members, or what I'm saying. I love that it invites
You check this
kind
out.
of, conversation that helps us to like further
Check this out.
Notions of sexuality, race, and gender. So like
Okay, anti-crit act-
yeah, I just wanted to bring these things to the force, you know.
So what I wanted to say about this image, kind of responding to what you and Rachel were saying, my perception being a black person, I kind of perceived it a little differently. With the black woman, I feel like it's giving off like strong femininity, but the other person to me kind of looks unisex, and it's giving like a succubus vibe to me, sort of like they're trying to not steal but modify, you know, this strong sexuality that this black woman has and trying to alter it into something. That's what I get from specifically that first image.
You get. Did you say androgynous or intersex? What did you say?
Yeah, like the person seems kind of unisex, or it's not exactly clear to me. And it's giving like a succubus vibe, like especially with the eye contact, you know, of the black girl, like she's pondering, you know, should I make this decision, Like it's giving when Eve ate the apple.
Sorry. Okay. All right. Yeah. Again, I just leave it with a comment about open to interpretation, completely open to interpretation. But I love the conversation about it. Yeah. I don't know. Them eyes are kind of now that I'm looking at them a little weird to me. But anyway, all right, we'll move on. Thank you, classmates, for jumping in, and thank you to the presenters for bringing this one that really allowed us to explore some things that we hadn't really talked about throughout the last 5 weeks. So I appreciate you all for that. All right, thank you. We'll take group 5 and then we're gonna do a little break. Group 5, we have Lauren and Stila. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we chose a TikTok. I'm gonna share my screen if I can. Yeah, we chose a TikTok, and it definitely pushes the boundaries of what you would consider art. It's more of like an informative piece, but the reason we chose it is it connected with what we had presented on before about interracial marriage and same-sex marriage, and this TikTok actually came up on my For You page a few months ago, and I refound it when we were talking about the final project. So I'm just going to play this really quick.
I'm not hearing her.
Are you not hearing it? Okay, hold on.
Oh, also, guys, I'm going to drop the attendance sheet in the chat. Sorry, I didn't do that before.
So you guys can't hear it, right?
I can't hear it.
Okay. I don't know how to connect it to my audio. Does anyone know why it's, or like how to connect it to so you guys can hear it?
I do not. I mean, I guess we could send the link as well, maybe?
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
Oh, okay.
I feel like it's something on the Zoom that I just don't know. Okay, hold on.
Where it falls short is it doesn't mandate them or constitute them into law. Okay, I need to talk about the Respect for Marriage Act. So, yes, it does federally recognize and protect same-sex marriages and interracial marriages. Where it falls short is it doesn't mandate them or constitute them into law, which means that this will fall back on the states, and there are at least 20 states in our country that will not recognize same-sex marriage and interracial marriage. Additionally, 36 senators voted against codifying this bill, which could be way better, into law. 36 senators voted against same-sex marriage and interracial marriage being codified into law. And guess what? 33 of them were white men. This bill is only being passed because there's a fear that Obergefell and Hodges is going to be overturned by the Supreme Court, which made marriage equality in 2015 the law of the land. But because we have all of Donald Trump's appointees in the Supreme Court, this is the result of that. Anyways, as a gay person, I'm not impressed. This needs to be better.
So yeah, that was the TikTok. And just to kind of talk on the Respect for Marriage Act, it went into law last year in December. And basically summarizing what she said, the Respect for Marriage Act upholds that each state must recognize same-sex and interracial marriage license, which means if Obergefell v. Hodges or Loving v. Virginia were ever overturned, states must still recognize marriage license of same-sex and interracial couples.
Yes, and then in terms of kind of like what's missing from the act, kind of like she touched on, it's a step in the right direction, but it again does not codify the Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodges. Instead, what it does is it forces states that don't have LGBT plus equality laws to recognize same-sex marriages or interracial marriages from other states that do, which again means that if Obergefell versus Hodges were to be overturned, the states would likely have the right to decide if they want to recognize or uphold future marriages. They would still have to recognize past ones, but for future ones. So again, the Respect for Marriage Act does force states to recognize LGBTQ plus marriages from other states, even if they themselves don't recognize those marriages, but it's not forcing every to recognize or allow same-sex marriages, which is why a lot of people, like the girl in the TikTok, feel like it's not doing enough.
Okay, and then so connecting it to the class, before I go into some specific examples and some specific readings, I wanted to point out, I think it was the first Jamboard we did, we taught, or the question was, what is the most important question you would like the course to help you answer? And I specifically had put, what is the relationship between power, the nation, and sexuality? And going back to that question and like answering it through the TikTok, I kind of thought, that the power is held in this 36 white men, these 30 something, I don't remember the number, white men who had a say over what is allowed for certain sexualities and voted against the recognition of interracial and same-sex marriage. And they're exploiting the fact that marriage is a building block of our nation. And then also, like, therefore, to define the nation within the hetero-patriarchal white family, these white men use their privilege to vote against the act. And then, yeah, so specifically in Peggy Pascoe's article, which it is the article that we did present on and the reason we chose this TikTok, a big proponent of nation is the property that one has and the legitimacy of a union and family. And so the Respect for Marriage Act, it doesn't force the states to allow same-sex marriages, but it does require them to respect all marriage license, same-sex and interracial marriage license, meaning recognizing marriage benefits and property rights, expanding who takes part in the nation. And then also speaking on Weinbaum's piece, I think that's how you say the name, Nation, a powerful statement was made that protection of the naturalness of heterosexual reproduction becomes central, as does the construction of women's wombs as repositories of racial identity. So what defines a nation is closely tied to sexuality and race, which is the big takeaway from this course. Therefore, codifying in law the recognition of same-sex and interracial marriages in all parts of the country is a step towards the nation being representative of all individuals. I did put in quotations, it's not nearly enough, definitely just the bare minimum. Yeah, and I will pass it off.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to preface to kind of like how Lauren said that, like, obviously this is not like a super traditional form of art, but we both kind of resonated with the original like Peggy Pascoe reading. And also because we feel that TikTok is such like a big platform now that people use for so many reasons, and a big reason now that at least I see a lot is like more like educational purposes, as this TikTok is. So it's something that like a lot more people are just kind of seeing like on the daily or in a more like easier way. And then again, we resonate with the concept in general and kind of wanted to learn more about it and dive a little deeper, as we both kind of feel like it's a really prominent thing in our society, especially after watching what recently happened with Roe v. Wade and the overturn of that. And now a lot of people are talking about what would
potentially happen if the Obergefell versus Hodges was to be overturned. And then to go off of the Pascoe reading again, sorry, where did it go? She talks about how in 1977, Utah placed a ban on same-sex marriages, and before this, 15 states had defined marriage as a contract between parties and didn't actually specify gender. But following this, between 1970 and 1980, 9 of these same states enacted a new definition, one that did use same-sex specific language, declaring that marriage was a contract between a man and a woman. So this kind of highlights again how the United States has a long history of failing to recognize and acknowledge both same-sex and interracial marriages, and how, here at this point, or back then, they even went as far as to redefine what they think marriage should be or what constitutes one, with seemingly the sole purpose to discriminate against same-sex marriages. So again, ultimately the Respect for Marriage Act is beneficial in itself, but it's definitely not foolproof or doing enough to serve protection for these marriages as a standalone act. Again, if the Obergefell was to be overturned. And then Pascoe also highlights the history of interracial marriages in the United States, how the Supreme Court's decision in both Loving versus Virginia, or Loving versus Virginia specifically, was a huge step for interracial marriages, and how that decision implied that biological race is no longer a significant category in U.S. marriage law. But again, with recent occurrences like Roe v. Wade, people are nervous that the same might happen, and then what we would likely see is that it would be up to the states as individuals if they would continue to allow same-sex or interracial marriages. And then those are our sources below.
Okay. Well, I think the only thing I will say about I think it was pretty straightforward the way you kind of made the connections, how you pulled those out from the readings, and thought about, it in relation to what she's saying in the video. So I don't have any challenges with the presentation. Does anybody have any questions for the group on this one? Rachel?
Did you guys think of maybe finding a Black woman or somebody else speaking on this issue on TikTok?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so like I did say, this is one that I had seen before, and that actually did come to mind. And this actually points out a really big issue in social media nowadays. I looked up Respect for Marriage Act, and what mostly came up was actually white men. And it was actually challenging for me to even go back and find this video of this one white woman. And I think that alone is an issue, that certain videos aren't pushed and certain platforms aren't pushed. So yes, that is a good comment though.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel.
I'll get you on the Black side of TikTok real soon.
Thank you.
I don't have TikTok, so I'm not even on the white side, but thank you for that comment. All right, I'm gonna give you guys a break. We're at 12:25. I'd say let's take 15 minutes at most. I'll set a timer, and then we'll just take all the other presentations when we get back. So I'll see you in a bit. Get refreshed, get some water, something, and we'll talk soon. Okay, I'm setting my timer now.
Hello? Hello? Oh my gosh. Gobble me. Yeah, right. My cat. My hole. Oh, come on, they do this.
I'm here. Just give me a second. For the next group, let me pull up the names. We can start getting ready. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I think that's Rachel, and Pansy, and Daniela for this group. You guys ready?
Yes, that's us. Pansy, were you going to send the link? Okay. I think they were going to. First, I wanted to talk about why when Pansy and I met, I had this. It was.
Hold on 1 second. There's a lot of noise outside my window. Just let me let them pass my window for a second.
Okay, and my cat's here too.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll mute until they pass.
The homework.
Yeah, it's still going. Can you guys hear me though? Can you hear it more than you can hear me?
I don't even hear it.
Okay, good. All right, well then you can go ahead because I'm gonna be muted anyway.
And I have a kitten in the background that's kind of a terrorist. So, I have had this this TikTok in my folder for a while. I had thought about doing it as a monologue as a Black woman, and they so when you see it, it's a poem, a spoken word with a Black man and a white woman, and you see, because how I see the power structure is the proximity to white maleness, where a white male is here and then a Black man is here and a white woman is here and a Black woman is here. Can't even see it. So I thought it was interesting to recalibrate and look at this in a position of how it was intended. But I would like for everybody to kind of imagine a Black woman doing it and saying the exact same words. So Pansy put the link in the chat.
Professor, do you mind sharing the video for us?
No, I can do that. 1 second.
Thank you.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
First day I realized I was Black. It was 2000. We had just learned about Blacks for the first time in 2nd grade. At recess, all the white kids chased me into the wood chanting slave. My mother said I refused to come out for 3 hours. Said she thinks I was lost in the trees, but I just needed to be closer to my roots.
Having a woman, having a boyfriend is a battle. If 70% of us are abused in a lifetime, what is the number of men doing it? The answer is not one man running faster than light to complete a mission, and that is what leaves me sick.
The second day I realized I was Black was in a gas station. I only had 25 cents, so I searched what to spend it on. The cashier floated from aisle to aisle, eyes fixed on my hands. That was the first time I realized skin color was a crime.
My body has become cause to write legislation, cause for ass snacks in the back of a class. My body has demanded everything except respect. I've been asked, what
wanted to disappear so bad.
As a woman, I've learned to answer to everything except my name. Little lady is not said to mean equal, but to make sure I remember my place, I battle between wanting to own my body and accepting there's a 1 in 4 chance a man will lay claim to my skin, a plot of land for the taking.
The last day I realized I was black was in an elevator in California. To the white woman that told me she knows what it feels like to be black because she grew up poor, I would tell you to think before you speak, but your mind has got to be bacteria infected. Through that left for them nothingness might be worse than no one at all.
There's a group of women going around the room sharing their personal definition of feminism. He is the only man in the room, and all of a sudden, the tone switches to destroying the patriarchy by annihilating all men.
Do you know what it feels like to be black? To pop lock your way in and out of hugs, it is not a problem you want to sympathize. But to tell me you know my pain is to stab yourself in the leg because you saw me get shot. We have 2 different wounds, and looking at yours does nothing to heal mine.
Never will I turn away an ally.
But when a man speaks on my behalf, that only proves my point.
Movements are driven by passion, not by asserting yourself dominant by a world that already put you there. You speak to no pain, you only fathom it because we told you it was there. You know nothing of silence until someone who cannot know your pain tells you how to fix it. Every day is a crucifixion when there is no regards for lines crossed.
I fight so my voice can be heard. I fight for the voices you silence, all in the name of what is right.
The problem is you assume the struggle is attached to a social class. I am black and bold and beautiful by nature. Ain't no income that can change that.
The problem was speaking up for each other.
Is that everyone is left
without a voice.
Okay, I'll stop sharing, right?
Yeah. So this was the spoken word poetry called Lost Voices, and the speakers, Simpson and Bosley, both take each other's voices and broadcast each other's struggles of facing racism and gender inequality. And each of these voices and these struggles is juxtaposed by the identity of the speaker, and this shows how the intersection of everyone's identities causes different levels of disadvantage within society's gender and social constructs. And throughout this video, they display awareness of this, saying, "We have 2 different wounds, looking at yours does nothing to heal mine." And this shows how not all disadvantages are measured in the same level, as stated in an early course reading integrating race and gender, when they talk about how these 2 social categories of race and gender are interlocking systems of oppression. And I think that the experiences of both speakers gain more significance when considering their experience under the combination of these social categories. And by referencing their wounds, they show the need to be able to control their own narrative and not allow other groups to speak for and take their experiences away from them. And them wanting to take back their voice, I think, connects to a concept in Audre Lorde's use of the erotic, of how they're trying to embrace the erotic and reject how society is trying to suppress themselves. And they're trying to take back their personal agency and empowerment to be able to freely express themselves. And I think this could help them give more momentum towards social change and expressing how social change can get more momentum. And I'll pass it on to Rachel to talk about it more specifically.
Excuse me. The body has become called to legislate. My body has become called to write legislation. My body has demanded everything but respect. These lines spoken by Simpson to represent Bosley's voice forcefully represents both artists, each alone and together. These statements could have been spoken together with each other, each of the artists' voices speaking truth. As a woman, Bosley is acknowledging the state's power over her body autonomy, Yuval Davis, 1996. The earlier writing, Women and the Biological Reproduction of Nation. Simpson is also represented in the statement because his ancestors' bodies were actually owned. Literal wars have been fought over people that look like him. The irony of both participants on a stage, one white woman and one black woman, is representative of two marginalized voices that were never supposed to be together. And I was referencing Loving Virginia. And I'm going to hand it back to Patsy.
I think the next speaker will be Daniela.
Yes. So as I was watching this, I noticed that there were a lot of parallels between this performance and our coursework, and especially like the struggle to find one's voice in a society where you're silenced. So much like how Sterling connected in gender, race, and nation, we can see there's a lot of intersection between race and gender, and specifically that integrated framework of how race can be gendered and gender can also be racialized. But what struck me most was how they were emphasizing these voices that are marginalized but also like kept in that box while others are enabled to speak for them. And as she says, like, when a man speaks on my behalf, that only proves my point. So that's like what generates that perpetual cycle of people of color and women being oppressed and ignored and their voices not being heard. And this poem also emphasizes how people of color and women are meant to stay in their place, as they put it, and be aware of that place, but also like remain invisible, as the professor said. And also, as Davis emphasized, women affect and are affected, so their voice and presence should be just as equal. And the same goes for people of color. But from this video, we see how powerful their voices are once they're able to speak for themselves.
And that's the end of our presentation.
Thank you. I wondered with that pause if you're at the end. I don't know, I got goosebumps listening to this speech. And once that happens, you know, the show is over. I'm just like, yeah, there is not much left to be said after this. So yeah, that was a fantastic selection. I think it really did the work of showing those connections, speaking to silences, speaking to invisibility, thinking about power differentials, thinking about how, you know, things happen at the intersection of whether race and class or race and gender, sexuality, all of it. I was here for all of it. And I think, yeah, you made very good use of the sources that you applied to this poem. So yeah, I loved it. I just loved it. I don't have much to say else on it, but if anybody wants to say anything else, now is your time. Any comments or questions for the group? I'm wondering to this point, what the, I don't know if it wouldn't be grad division because it's an undergrad course, whoever the powers that be when I submit my grades, because so far, I mean, I don't know if I can write so many A's for one class. They're going to be like, you know, I don't know if you're actually.
I think you can, though. I think you can.
I'm just like, yeah, you guys have been doing like really, really, really great. I'm on this grass cutting. Yes, I'm just really, I'm really happy. I'm really happy. So thank you. All right, let's move on then to group 7. We have Jessica and Tori. Yeah, I know you guys want the A's and all first year. All right, let me mute. It's noisy.
Okay, so we chose this political cartoon that was originally published in, I believe, 1884 for The Judge, and it depicts a house in which an Irish man and a black man are inside, and they're sort of like looking smugly at
the white woman and the Chinese man who are outside. And I'm not sure if you guys can read the sign below the window, but it says Poles, women, and Chinaman not admitted. They cannot vote. And so the white woman is knocking on the door, sort of symbolic of her trying to get in and trying to be granted the right to vote. During this time, the suffragist movement was sort of taking off, although they wouldn't see any of their efforts really come into fruition until much later when the 19th Amendment was passed. And in the woman's bag, there are references to Susan B. Anthony and one that says, "We want to vote." And so our course theme that we tried to connect to was mostly about citizenship, but we tried to be intersectional in that aspect with acknowledging women as well as different racial groups. So the purpose of this political cartoon is to highlight the disparities in voting rights between racial and gender groups. By 1884, universal white male suffrage as well as black male suffrage had been established, hence why the black man and the Irish man are inside the house, which is people who can vote, while the white woman and the Chinese man are literally stuck outside in the cold, as the caption asserts. However, while in the political cartoon, the black man is shown as observing the situation with a smile, the true reality of the time, this time around the late 1800s, was that black men were more often than not denied the ability to exercise their right to vote. And even post-emancipation, post-Civil War, free black people were stripped of legal protections while their very existence nearly became criminalized. Think Jim Crow laws. They were banned from holding a wide variety of jobs and also from using public accommodations in the midst of segregation. And furthermore, there were racist policies in place, such as literacy tests and the grandfather clause that prevented black men from voting. So literacy tests were just if you were not literate to a certain point, you would be denied your vote. And the grandfather clause was if your grandfather was a slave, then you were not allowed to vote. It wasn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, that all discriminatory voting practices were outlawed. As for the woman in the image, the widely held view of the time was that women were inherently dependent on their husbands, and according to Citizenship, Universalism, and Exclusion by Evelyn Nanako Glenn, as dependents, they had no separate interests that needed to be represented in the polity. Their interests were assumed to be identical to those of their husbands. At the same time, the definition of woman as categorically dependent made it possible to define men as categorically independent. So despite this, the suffragist movement was determined and persistent, as seen by the letters that the woman is carrying in the image that demand their right to vote. And I'll pass that on.
It is notable that the only woman in the caricature is white. This is primarily because Chinese, African American, and Irish women suffered from the double disadvantage of being non-white and female. Women were seen as dependent and helpless, while non-white people were seen as less evolved and inferior. And so non-white women were seen as inferior and helpless, reducing them to the lowest status in Western society. Furthermore, unlike today, feminism wasn't an all-group encompassing colorblind movement back then. Western feminism was for and by white women, often at the cost of their non-white counterparts. Quoting from the text, while Beecher and Stowe emphasized domesticity's service to darkened nations, the existence of pagans as potential converts performs a reciprocal service in the extension of domesticity to single American women. Such Christian neighborhoods would allow unmarried women without children to leave their work in factories, offices, and shops, or their idleness in refined leisure to live domestic lives on their own, in some cases by adopting native children. Domesticity's imperial reach posits a way of extending women's sphere to include not only the heathen but also the unmarried Euro-American woman who can be freed from biological reproduction to rule her own empire of the mother. This shows how Anglo-Saxon women in the United States sought to position themselves as enablers of colonialism, especially in regard to reaching the interior female spaces of colonized peoples to elevate their position in society. Another part of the Manifest Domesticity reading that emphasizes this very point is all heathen people have a high reverence for medical knowledge. Should they find Christian ladies accomplished in this science, would it not greatly raise the status of women in the estimation of those nations, where one of the most serious impediments to moral improvement is the degradation and ignorance to which their females have been centuries consigned? Though superior to heathen women in status, American women would accomplish their goal by imagining gender as a common ground, which would give them special access to women abroad. As women, they could be more effective imperialists, penetrating those interior feminine colonial spaces, symbolized by the harem that remain inaccessible to male missionaries. We decided to select this caricature because we felt that it highlights the intersectional impact of race and gender on a person's status in society in general, and enfranchisement status in particular. Given that African American men obtained the right to vote before white women, it appears that gender was a bigger impediment than race when it came to voting rights. Yeah, that's the end of it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to end on, about the significance of imperial masculinity or this patriarchy. But yeah, also this piece, I think, just like really foregrounds the complexity of race and gender and thinking about like nation, construction of the nation, thinking about citizenship. So yeah, I loved it for the way it kind of thought through those kinds of complex relations, and bringing in like specific and differently positioned racialized groups. But just more like as a general comment about the way the presentations have been going today, I love the fact that so many of you are looking at different things that are really like covering the breadth of what we would have talked about over the last 4.5 weeks. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I think this was a very good piece to think through. Voting rights, the complexity of citizenship. What else did I write? Yeah, and the double marginalization of women who are not white women, but also like thinking about the significance of gender and the significance of white women in terms of how ideas of the nation is constructed, like even beyond the borders of the United States. So what are the limitations around being woman, even if you're white within the context of the US, but how were those very women significant or instrumentalized in determining the boundaries of personhood and citizenship in a more transnational or geopolitical sense. So yeah, good job with that. Thank you. Yeah. Group 8. Also, guys, please remember to sign the register. I think only like 2/3 of you have signed, and I know that we have like 32 of you today. So, let's see who's next.
I'm having some issues sharing my screen, and I was wondering if I could just quickly share with you the document where we have our picture.
Sure.
So,
do you want me to share it, right?
that would be great. Thank you. Here it is, right here. That should be the right one. Uh-oh.
Can you see it?
Okay, so I'm Kristen, and I'm going to start us off. So we decided to we chose this picture because we my group was actually really passionate about the Angela Davis reading that we did, the Racism, Birth Control, and Reproductive Rights. And so we were looking around and trying to find an image that just kind of stuck with us. And this one is powerful to us because, first of all, it's taken from the Boston Globe. It's from 1971, and it's from the Women's Liberation March at Copley Square Plaza in Boston. And we feel that it connects to Angela Davis's writing, Racism, Birth Control, and Reproductive Rights, and Mira Yuval Davis's article, Women and the Biological Reproduction of the Nation. And we feel like this one is powerful because this image was taken during the second wave of feminism, where women were like the full scope of how politicized class, race, gender oppression, and things like along that line were being realized by women. And Mira Yuval Davis discusses in her paper how at the time the focus was just to control women's bodies and make up the population of the country for the sake of national interest. But really, it was just a racist strategy of population control. And there was actually written by Angela Davis talks about in her writing how Margaret Sanger wrote in a letter to a colleague that we don't want word to get out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, which is horrifying in itself to like completely go after an entire population. But the reason why this image had so much power to me personally is because this picture is taken of what the movement could have been, in my opinion. So like Angela Davis talks about in her work that there was like the main movement, which was white women fighting for abortion, and then there was kind of like a side movement, but there was which was where they included sterilization, but they didn't really work together, and that's why the movement was not as successful as it could have been. And to me, this image just shows like the power of what could have been to unite together. And if the white women in the feminist like in the abortion movement, if they had focused more on like the history behind like why POC women did not want to get involved in their particular movement, if they had like looking into the history and seen like, hey, horrible things have been done, and they've said, oh, it's on behalf of birth control, but really in reality it's trying to eliminate a population or secretly sterilizing 14-year-old girls. In the fine print, you're agreeing to this stuff. And so like the two main things that the history involved that kind of just I wanted to focus on was the Negro Project that Angela Davis wrote about, which was literally just trying to get rid of Black people. They were there was a one example of this was a sterilization of 2 Black girls in Montgomery, Alabama, where that's kind of like how the Pandora's box completely opened. And there was case after case after case of girls who had no idea what was about to happen to them going in and being sterilized. And this happened to thousands and thousands of young people. And 65% of women who were sterilized in North Carolina were Black, and only 35% were white, and they didn't even account for women of other races in those numbers at the time. But another one that really stuck with me was the Puerto Rican Sterilization Project, where they said, oh, we're going to go in to protect them. We want to help make the island of Puerto Rico healthy, and we want to make the people healthier. And the reason why they're having all these issues with unemployment and with health problems is because their population's too big. So let's start this program here. But in reality, what they were trying to do was they wanted to diminish the Puerto Rican population, and they wanted to like make it minimal enough that it wasn't a threat to the white race. So they're so sorry, lost my note, but so it connects back to me for like what really separated these two movements and what could have made everything much more powerful is if the white main feminist movement, which I say main in quotations because I'm quoting what one of the authors said, but the main feminist movement was the white women fighting for abortion rights. And if they had looked into past history and if they had all decided to work together and communicate, then they could have come together as a more powerful force sooner and had better results. But instead, there was there was different rules for different women. So if you were a white woman who was like you had a lot of money, then they were like, no, you have to have kids. You have to have kids. Have as many babies as possible because they wanted more white babies. But if you were black or if you were Puerto Rican or if you were Native American or any other, anything but white, then they were actively trying to sterilize as many people as possible for the sake of national interest. And this is a underestimate, like this is the reported numbers, but there's like we all know that there's always going to be more that are just not accounted for. But the Eugenics Commission of North Carolina showed that there was almost 8,000 sterilizations carried out since 1933, and 5,000 of those sterilizations were black people. And so that's just a sterilization, but overall, in conclusion for me, this was what the movement could have been and should have been about all along. More inclusive and making sure that everybody is being protected rather than just focusing on one aspect. They were only looking at one aspect of it, because like getting abortion is like getting that right is a great step in the direction, but they were trying to turn that around into, yeah, you can get abortions, but we're going to sterilize you when you do it. So if they had included no forced sterilization in the movement in the beginning, then it could have been a much more powerful movement. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass off to my other group mates.
Hello. Hi, this is Surak. So yeah, I would like to go off of the post. The intersection between the birth control movement, classism, racism, and feminism in the United States would be the main topic I would take from this movement. And a couple of arguments I'd like to make. The birth control movement initially aimed to empower women, particularly those from the working class, to have control over the reproductive health. However, it gradually embraced the eugenic and racist ideologies, like my classmate said, promoting the idea that certain populations should limit their family size. And I'd like to touch on to Margaret Sanger, a significant figure of the birth control movement. Started with focus on supporting working class women, but over time was influenced by eugenic ideas, which ultimately shaped the direction of the movement. The concept of eugenics, despite being pseudoscientific, were widely accepted due to their alignment with imperialist and capitalist ideologies prevalent at the time. So diving into the complexities of the birth control movement in the United States would be initially emerged as a part of feminist cause, emphasizing women's rights and to control their reproductive health. But then, hailing from the working class background, passionately championed the cause for women, like Margaret Sanger, struggle with poverty and the burden of unwanted pregnancies. However, the movement grew and it began grappling uh, with other issues of race and class. What started the noble cause soon became clouded with the racist and classist ideologies, um, which suggested selective breeding to improve the human race, began to infiltrate the movement. The narrative shifted, suggesting the certain demographics, especially the poor, immigrant, and black populations, had a moral obligation to limit their family size. Sanger, initially a fervent advocate for working class women, uh, was not immune to these influences as her alignment shifted towards the eugenic ideas. The movement became increasingly biased and veering away from original focus of women's rights towards controlling the proliferation of certain undesirable populations. These shifts with the birth control movement were not isolated but reflected broader societal trends. The popularity of eugenics was largely given by the capitalist monopolies of the early 20th century, serving as a justification for imperialist in, incursions and intensified worker exploitation. The influential capitalists such as the Carnegies, Harrimans, and Kellogg's openly supported these theories. So, in conclusion, the birth control movement, while fundamentally rooted to women's rights, was significantly influenced by societal context of its time, leading to the incorporation of eugenic and classist ideologies. Illustrates how movement, no matter how noble the cause, can be influenced by the social and political climate. And I'll pass on to my classmate, Rochelle. Thank you.
Of time, I wanted to end up on an article near Davis, in which it is said reproductive rights can be society without losing sight of differential power centers of the collectivities and groupings in it.
Sure, your connection is very spotty and you're cutting out. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
It could also be my connection. I don't know that it's yours. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Just because I believe we passed a little bit, I just wanted to end it is said reproductive rights campaigns should take account of the without losing sight of the differential powers dimension of different collective and grouping, in which recalls the power dynamics of YMCA amongst the reproductive rights movement.
Oh, Professor. Just a correction for just to finish up our presentation, a correction that I wanted to put in because I said something incorrect earlier. So I used the wrong statistic for the amount of sterilizations performed in Angela Davis's writing, and so I just wanted to correct that with a quote from the text, which was
the figures went under a drastic revision. Carl Schultz, director of HEW's Population Affairs Office, estimated that between 100,000 and 200,000 sterilizations had actually been funded by the federal government that year. During Hitler's Germany, incidentally, 250,000 sterilizations were carried out under the Nazis' hereditary law. And then she ends it with a question: is it possible that the record of Nazis throughout their years of their reign may have been almost equaled by the US government funding sterilizations in the space of a single year? So it just shows like how, like, it's kind of makes you speechless. Like, it's unimaginable how many people that they were doing this to, and like where to be compared to like the entirety of Nazi Germany in a single year. So that was just the correction that I wanted to make to what I said earlier when I said I think 8,000.
It's an important clarification. So thank you. Yeah, no worries. I think my internet is also shitty, so I'm not even gonna blame you for this. But yeah. Okay. All right. So what I loved about this presentation was so you didn't use the language of futuristic, but futurism is something that we talk a lot about in ethnic studies, and you have like Afrofuturist perspective, you also have like indigenous futurity, that kind of thing. But I think what I was getting from what you were saying about this this image kind of combining two movements that operated in a kind of siloed way, that there would have been, I guess, more force if they were more intentional with a kind of solidarity, I think, is along a futurist kind of thought pattern, I suppose. So on the image, it's combining two movements that weren't necessarily in step at a time. So it presents a kind of like time lapse, something that is more kind of anachronistic, which is just a fancy word for saying it doesn't comport with the time. So you're essentially saying, they projected into the future. This image is a projection into the future, the possibilities that would have existed if, the movement against sterilization and the movement for abortion were combined, and what possibilities could have come out of that. So I really love that focus from the presentation. I think you give a lot of information about, all relevant information, I must say, about what was happening regarding abortion. I just feel like I would have created the presentation around this frame, around so I think the first half of the presentation really did that nicely. But yeah, as it went on, I kind of felt like it got into the nitty-gritty of the movement, but I kind of wanted it to come back in a more direct way because remember, you're analyzing the frame, to the frame. But yeah, I think you did a great job of, bringing attention to what was happening in the movements and why it would have been important to make a kind of an effort in solidarity. And then yeah, I do need to go and read it because for Rachel's piece, I kept tripping out, so I didn't really hear much of that. But I think you guys did a great job, so thank you. Anybody with any quick questions to the group? I think we have 3 more presentations, which means we have to start moving a little bit more swiftly at this point. Any questions?
I left my comment in the chat about Boston at this time, and Boston and the racism that encompasses the city even now.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. All right, thank you guys, Rochelle, Crispin, and Turak. All right, so let me stop sharing, and then we'll move on to who's next. Arasu, Sina, and Tan.
Okay, we're ready. Let me.
Yeah, let me screen share.
Okay, perfect. Sorry for my background if it's loud.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so this is the imagery we came up with. And we found this was really relevant for a multitude of reasons. We actually had to keep it short because this is a very important topic. But this was relevant because it's mentioning Kim Kardashian, who's kind of become like her own representative within the Black community, and Stephen A. Smith. I don't know if you guys know about him, but he's a well-known sportscaster, but he's also popular for being a gossip in the community, in the Black community specifically. So what I wanted to say is, historically in America, Black women's sexuality has consistently been subjected to harsh labels and stereotypes, which have led to negative effects on their well-being and feelings of well-being and empowerment. As we saw at the beginning of Mama's Baby, Papa's Maybe, time and time again, the Black woman has been portrayed as a hypersexual, promiscuous being. These labels create a stereotype, but at the same time, help to diminish individual personalities and characteristics. As a result of these negative labels, Black women often face unfair judgment and discrimination, making it challenging for them to fully embrace and express their sexuality without fear of judgment. In this piece of media, it's focused around Kim Kardashian, a popular celebrity who's been consistently in the media for years. And while Kim Kardashian is not Black, she has infiltrated the Black community and become something like an honorary member to young Black girls, particularly her children, making this post relevant to our discussion. And in this tweet, we have Stephen A. Smith, a prominent Black sportscaster, casually throwing around offensive terms in reference to a mother and a daughter. Since Kim Kardashian has been so heavily publicized, we know a large amount about her life and relationships. We've seen in her several different relationships over the years. We have seen her in several relationships. But what makes her different from the typical dating woman? Not much, actually. Dating, marrying, divorcing are all common things that women do in modern day America, but different groups get judged differently for them. Kim has always been fairly open about her sexuality and somewhat free, and that freeness is what confuses people and leads to harsh terminology. And I just want to touch again on Kim Kardashian is not a Black woman, but somehow has portrayed herself as a Black woman to the public. She's, altered her features and she's conducted herself in a way that is attempting to fantasize and fetishize the Black woman. And that's also why this was really important.
Thank you for that. And that leads into my section. When Stephen A. Smith quotes Kris Jenner as a pimp, he goes beyond discussing the current context involving Kris Jenner's mediating the case between Kim Kardashian and her boyfriend, with regards to her sex tape. For those that do not know, Kim Kardashian became popularized through media as her sex tape between Ray J, a musician and actor, I'm not too sure. But their sex tape got leaked. And then which furthered this discussion. And so as I continue, he questions Kris Jenner's character on a more fundamental level
asking whether she truly has authority to enforce sexuality on other people, as discussed heavily in this class. This is very similar to what we see in Foucault, The History of Sexuality, where we discuss the background story behind European colonization. After European explorers arrived in Africa, they saw African American women as having a very exotic body with huge breasts and genitals, not to be found anywhere else in the world. Through the media, there has been reinforcement of these features through BBL culture, appropriating Black women's natural phenotype, which ultimately has been labeled through pop culture as a mimicked Kim K figure. In reference to the history that encrypts the Sarah Baartman case, she has brought home this image of the African American woman to Europe, where Europeans view Sarah Baartman as immoral, vile, promiscuous animal who had to be colonized by Europeans. Similarly, when Kris Jenner interferes to mediate the case, she does not see her daughter as someone worthy of dignity, but rather as a sex piece to publish to gain attention for their company. In fact, Kris Jenner only removed the pictures from the internet that gave her daughter a bad look, while keeping all the other pictures. She enforced this sexualized stigma around Kim Kardashian, even though Kim Kardashian did not like the sex tape leak and had sued the company for revealing it. What's interesting is that even though Kim disapproved, she has made to accept her mother's deal of showing her subjugation to authority, just as Africans were subjugated to European authority under the basis of their tarnished image. And to speak more about that, and making the connections, like we said, Kim Kardashian is not a Black woman, but she's infiltrated herself in the Black community by having Black partners and having Black children. And this in itself creates this dynamic between the Black community and Black women specifically, with women in positions of power like Kim Kardashian that have used their platform not to go against the rich, but appropriate Black culture. And in this creates this conversation surrounding the tweet that we have here. And I'll leave it to Arisu to finish.
Do you guys want to share?
I think you guys saw the tweet, but yeah, I think it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. In that case, I can go forward. In addition, we also read a piece in class called Mama's Maybe and Papa's Maybe, in which there was a big theme in the text involving the lack of Black paternal control over children due to the nature of slavery and institutional rights that treated Black men as work animals who bred for the plantation and not to be fatherly figures. This strongly connects to the Kim Kardashian case portrayed in the picture that we were showing, in which Kim Kardashian's boyfriend filed several court cases against the Kardashian family, reporting that they ruined his public music image. But her boyfriend should have control over his reproduction, because that's something that is innate to his own life, his own personal well-being. But what happened was it was exposed in a video that he did not consent to, which clearly shows how he's being used for the Kardashians, just as the Black man was used for reproduction back in the day during slavery and institutional segregation. We also see there's connection to E. Hammond's Toward a Genealogy of Black Female Sexuality, where there's this big idea of the strategy of silence to protect Black sexuality. E. Hammond argued that many Black women practiced silence around sexuality because by practicing silence, Black women can be viewed in a different manner that would be different from the dominant discourse that paints them in a hypersexual, disgusting manner. However, in this text, it was mentioned that the strategy fails as well, because it ultimately does not change the image of Black women's sexuality, as it has been established before. This strongly connects to the Kim Kardashian case that we have in the picture right now, because Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner, in this sense, have both spoken up about their sexuality. Kim Kardashian with her numerous relationships, and Jenner with her transgender status. Yet both women face a lot of online hate over their sexual expression today, revealing how their sexuality is something that a lot of people target and has not changed at all due to the silence that many black feminists have argued for the last several decades. In fact, Stephen A. Smith, this black reporter, was forced to remove this tweet right away due to its controversy, showing how silence regarding black sexuality does not change the festering image of black sexuality that people have. You might be avoiding the stereotype, but the stereotype still exists, since speaking up about it causes a lot of controversy. With that, we thank you for this presentation.
Yeah, just correction that it's actually Caitlin, or Caitlin, sure, my pronunciation is the transgender partner with that configuration, not Grace. Okay, all right. Honestly, I think I may have to actually read your piece because I feel like some of it I was with you in some ways, and in some other ways I wasn't. I kind of felt like you were making the case for and against them at the same time. But I understand it's still a bit more complicated than that. But a couple things that I did want to pick up on. So the idea of what's appropriative, the idea of how black female sexuality has been appropriated and commodified, right? So the idea of mobilizing, utilizing blackness for capsule accumulation. So in the sense, for popularity, for fame, and for actual money in the bank. Like, yeah, I'm totally rocking with that that idea. And also with the rigid of it. So on the one hand, it's about how can I, as somebody who does not occupy a black body, use blackness and black sexuality as though I do occupy that body. And in relation to that as well, it's like, what is my association with a black man, and what kind of social power does that give me as well? So yeah, I do like how you bring those things into the part. Hold on, let me see the comment. Right. So feeling on that. I tired. So part of the first bit was like I was missing the argument that you were making, I believe. So the connection to the black man who is saying, is she a prostitute, is she a pimp? I feel like I'd need to sit with that bit. The connections you were making there a bit more. But yeah, for sure, if I were just to take the things that came off in a really clear way to me, I would say those are very good, salient, well-made points. But there are things about the presentation I think I'll have to have a second look at as I'm reading your one page off. But anybody else with any thoughts or questions or comments in relation to this presentation? If you do, you can also add it in chat because we do have 2 more groups we only have like technically 10 more minutes, but I guess we can push to 2 o'clock if folk are willing. So you can leave your comments in the chat for that group if you do have some. So we'll take the group with Park now if you're ready.
Okay, let me share the screen.
Okay. I'll try and keep it quicker because we're running out of time.
But after going through the class content, initially our group decided that we wanted to pick media surrounding the topic of colonialism and feminism. And after plugging those keywords into Twitter, our groupmate Sam stumbled upon a conversation that occurred over a series of tweets between a person named Seyook K. Chawla and a white man named Tyson Clark, who, after digging through his Twitter, appears to be a lifestyle coach. And this conversation happened on July 28th, 2023. So last week. And Chawla tweets, interesting that the modern day fighters of colonialism, which ended over 100 years ago, have no problem trying to colonize people morally and intellectually. Clark responds to her with, you've got to gerrymander history pretty carefully to vilify colonialism. It's like hating on yourself for having to learn the alphabet before you can read. And Chawla responds, I don't agree with that at all. I'm Indian, my country was famously colonized, and many atrocities occurred as a result of it. Did they also bring education? Yes, but you can certainly vilify colonialism. Clark disagrees with them once again, saying, from an individual perspective, sure, we wouldn't have largely ended slavery without colonialism. There'd be no widespread women's rights. The structures of colonialism provided the shoulders that modernity stands upon. There is no egalitarianism without colonialism. And the tweets continue as such. And the question we drew from this conversation was, can progress be seen as a result of colonialism? Obviously, we don't think so. We disagree with Clark, but that's clearly not the case for people. And we were all surprised that even in 2023, people believe that colonization overall brought more benefits than negatives to those who were colonized. And that's why we chose to present on these series of tweets. We disagree with Clark's opinions on many fronts because there are so many things to unpack in his tweets that related to course materials. The first being his claim that all citizens, including those who were colonized, are beneficiaries of modernization and egalitarianism thanks to colonialism. One representative example would be the life of Sarah Baartman, who in life and in death was available for purchase and examined as a representative of the other. After being brought to Europe under questionable circumstances, she was paraded around as an object to be leered at, just because she was different from the people who lived in Europe at the time. By treating her as an other, she was never an equal in the eyes of the colonizers, thus going against Clark's claims that egalitarianism exists because of colonialism. Okay, I will pass it off to my groupmates now.
Okay, I'm going to take over and continue disproving Clark's argument by using the content of her class materials. Hopefully I could make a bit more contribution in demonstrating why and how the byproduct of colonialism can't exactly be either egalitarianism or modernization, as Clark claims. First of all, we don't even have to look too far and just examine the case of America. America itself is a nation that has a history of being colonized by the British. Ironic reality, though, is that they embraced the spirit of their former oppressors and inflicted that colonial philosophy upon their own citizens. And one good example of this could be found from Race, Gender, and Intercultural Relations by Peggy Pascoe, where it says the US used a substantial amount of energy and time to stop interracial marriage from happening in the States. This was materialized through miscegenation law, which by itself is extremely racist and very far from egalitarianism. I shouldn't forget to also mention that there was manifest domesticity, which was a prevalent feminine ideology in America. According to another text, Manifest Domesticity, written by Amy Kaplan, feminine actions of using Thanksgiving Day for fundraising out of quote-unquote sympathy were made in America. But the problem was that quote-unquote sympathy in this context was for white Americans who deserved to be, again, quote-unquote emancipated from Black people. So basically what Manifest Domesticity did is that it shifted an imperial nation into a paradoxical and contradictory home where colonized foreign specters roamed around, completely excluded. Moreover, as I quoted from Citizenship, Universalism, and Exclusion by Glenn, citizenship is not just a matter of formal legal status, it is a matter of belonging, including recognition by other members of the community. but neither miscegenation law nor manifest domesticity seem to have respected the rightful citizens of the United States. These again simply cannot be the case if the nation was truly egalitarian or modernized. Another example in America would be a choice paradigm, which we presented earlier, which simply fail to meet or reflect the reality that Native women are facing in the States, not in the past, but right now. As the text Better Dead Than Pregnant says, the history of Native women and colonial reproductive policies demonstrates the political bankruptcy of the choice paradigm for articulating a reproductive rights agenda. I just briefly went over the consequences of colonization in America, displayed in both the past and the present, that are tainted with hatred and sufferings. As a South Korean whose ancestors suffered so much from colonization, I can confidently say that the situations outside the US were either similar or even worse. So what I like to claim is that colonization is supposed to be vilified, as an objection to what Clark stated in his post above. And now I'm going to pass it on to Sam.
For these next two readings, it unpacks more of what Clark was saying about structures of colonialism in the form of nationalism and what nation is. Just to reiterate what Clark was saying, he wrote that the structures of colonialism provided the shoulders that modernity stands upon, and that there's no egalitarianism without colonialism. And just to clarify what egalitarianism is, if someone doesn't know, it's, according to Oxford Languages, the doctrine that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. This perspective is disputed by The Lay of the Land, Genealogies of Imperialism, in which McClintock writes that linked symbolically to the land, women are regulated to a realm beyond history and are figured as property belonging to men, and hence as lying by definition outside the male contests over land, money, and political power. This argues that women are, well, this demonstrates that women are seen as objects, and inanimate objects and things that could be conquered, for example land, are seen with feminine connotations, which shows that the power imbalance between women and men. So that debunks the claim of egalitarianism that's present, that Clark claims. Second, with the structures of colonialism, I agree that there is indeed structures of colonialism, as Clark says, but Clark says it in a positive point, claiming that the structures are beneficial, like it's essentially beneficial to most, but that's not the case, as Nation by Weinbaum says that nationalism is seen as fomenting dangerously partisan solidarities, and a nation is seen as fiction that is made to cohere through ideological pressures that masquerade as natural, but are in fact self-interested, self-consolidating, and ultimately driven by capitalist and imperialist imperatives. This quote from this reading asserts that the structures of colonialism are related to the perspectives of capitalism and imperialism, and whose values are oppressive in nature towards marginalized communities. And so while these structures of colonialism, as Clark claims, do exist, they don't exist in the positive sense that he views it as. I just lost my train of thought, but it's actually in the opposite sense, in that these current structures have harmed and will continue to harm marginalized communities in the US and everywhere else in the world. And so, although society has made progress since the height of colonialism, tweets like Clark's demonstrate that many people still have a skewed view on what the consequences of colonialization really were and how they affect people today. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's one of it's called, I think I don't remember who's the author, but talks about colonial agnosia, or colonial unknowing. So one of the impacts of colonization is those kinds of viewpoints, right? That colonization was actually beneficial. And it just reminds me of the current Republican drive right now, that it's like arguing that slavery was so beneficial to enslaved Africans. So it's a through line from that kind of thinking to what we're witnessing right now. Thank you. I mean, I wish I could comment more on your presentation. You guys did a good job, so thank you. So now we'll take our last presenters, Shaw and Suarez. If you're ready, you can go.
I'll go ahead and share my screen, but my Wi-Fi has been a little weird, so if I lose you, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Let's see. Ooh, give me 1 second. Oh shoot. It's having me leave the meeting. Do you think you could share it?
Yeah, go ahead and put it in.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, anybody who has to go, you can. I'm sorry, the last group will not have the benefits of your ears, but if you do need to go, you can go. But if you can stay, I'd appreciate it. You can share the link with me.
There you go. I put it in the chat.
It's saying I need access.
Oh man. Okay, that one should work.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. So me and my group chose a media piece called The Principles of Pleasure. We chose this piece because we were interested in how we can intersect everything we've learned about women's sexuality and autonomy with modern day perspectives on how pleasure and sexuality are discussed. We noticed that there was still a lot of hate from people who insisted that this was highly inappropriate, quote unquote, overly feminist, and several other instances attacking the non-binary members of the docuseries. We wanted to acknowledge the difficulties that come with the efforts of trying to have an inclusive discussion, especially when it's met with such strong negativity, and still be able to promote the efforts in any ways we could. So going back to the docuseries itself, it's on Netflix and it covers the science, social opinions, and debunking of common myths regarding the female anatomy and women's sexual pleasure. It aims to promote inclusive conversation about female pleasure by acknowledging the taboos and increasing biological understandings. Now, we couldn't show you, obviously, the entire 150-minute documentary, but we put the trailer in the next slide. Yeah, and if we could just play that.
Pleasure? Pleasure means, what do I think?
Talking about pleasure can feel awkward. You just don't talk about it. I don't know why, but honestly, it shouldn't. Pleasure is deeply connected to sex.
It turns out that the orgasm gap is even wider than the well-known wage gap.
There really is this communal experience of, I know this can be better for me. Imagine if you can go back in time and learn about your body and how to embrace your desires without fear. How would the rest of your life be different?
I would like to know how to not feel so guilty. It's okay for women to take ownership of their health and their pleasure.
Knowing where the clitoris is knowledge. Knowing where your own clitoris is power.
Somebody's dad is gonna watch that and go, huh. Not to sound like a broken vibrator, but pleasure is not a nice to have. It's a need to have.
I'm having a good time by myself.
I'm having some good sex now. I'm so happy for you. We gotta go. Where's my car going?
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. This docuseries, I feel like is trying to like heal all the generational trauma that we've been talking about this entire class. All the speeches that I've been hearing, right, is talking about all the perversion and oppression of women, especially women of color. And this docuseries just goes against everything, right? It's trying to make things a lot more candid and open and honest, because for decades and probably like centuries, right? Like women have been oppressed and like their sexuality has not been acknowledged in so many ways. I found there was like this moment in the docuseries where I guess some like medical dictionary like didn't even acknowledge the existence of the clitoris because they thought, well, it's so small that like it doesn't matter. And it's just like those things are just so, they permeate into our culture where we really don't acknowledge these type of things. And as you can see on this slide, like there are certain readings that connect to it, but some specific ones that I found were give me 1 second. Yeah, in the history of sexuality, it kind of goes into like how women's sexuality was first repressed. And I feel like this docuseries just again goes against it, right? They just want to have these open and honest conversations and talk about these things, right? Like something simple was like they brought out all these like sex toys and stuff, and they were just talking about it very casually, which I feel like is just so, it goes against everything that we know and what we're used to. And it also just like address like body positivity, which I think connects to like Sarah Bartman, where she was kind of objectified and sexualized, but also she wasn't embraced in a good way. So a lot of the episodes touch on that as well, that not everybody looks the same, everybody's body looks different. And yeah, I also really like the diversity of opinions. You know, they had trans individuals on there, and LGBTQ were also included on that, and just different ages and all that stuff. But yeah, I feel like this might be like a good note to end the class on, right? Because this entire class was talking about all the bad things that have been going on through the centuries with women's sexuality. And I feel like this docuseries really just try to show that there is progress, and we are like breaking down those like generational barriers. So yeah, that's it.
I really love that. I really love whenever there's an opportunity to like end on a note of hopefulness rather than despair. Of end on a note that showcases all the progress we've been able to make, even though the struggle continues, right? So thank you for dropping that here. Um, and yeah, I think also just like paying attention to the erotic zones of pleasure and joy um, is also like a very useful, important conversation to have. And again, just to underscore that we've really had an opportunity today to just examine the breadth of the syllabus, which is also a very good thing to have been able to do with these presentations. So yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for a job well done. I thoroughly enjoyed these 14 weeks, even though, it was a lot of work and a lot of reading. And for those of you who were able to stay for the additional 10 minutes, I super appreciate you because I wanted this group to also have an audience. So much love. I look forward to getting the short papers, and I will input your grades as soon as possible, hopefully at the end of this weekend. So sending y'all love, and I hope you get some time to rest and rejuvenate before the fall if you're coming back to UCSD. If not, then go with God and all the best. Appreciate y'all. All right. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a nice day and have a nice summer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Alright, I had a question regarding our presentation. You said you wanted more clarity on, was it Stephen A. Smith?
This is the one with the Kim Kardashian, right?
Yes.
I feel like it was just like maybe my brain, to be honest.
I think it was a lot of, well, from like our work on it. Yeah, I think because there was a lot of trying to draw things together and connecting to the ratings as well. Um, but I think fundamentally, like the message was to perpetrate, like, okay, the black man in the media is formulating these tools against these women that have infiltrated themselves into the black community, which ultimately does affect black women as her children and grandchildren are black. But yeah, so I'm not sure if there was something in particular, as we're kind of like brushing up on the work to share.
No, I mean, I think that helps. I think as your hook, if you haven't written it yet, I think you had also written a comment in the chat, which I think was a very clarifying comment about women and how black women are represented in media and how appropriation has worked. So maybe you could just like underscore that in your write up as the hook for the presentation.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Bye.
Sure. How? Looks like you got stabbed with a Marco. Oh, you think? Yeah, that's pretty obvious. I could have said. Look, I think we got to prepare how you can go. Okay, let's just cut the crap. You guys are still mad at me because I didn't start my name with a W. It was supposed to be a team effort. We all agreed it was gonna be cool if we named ourselves who, what, when, where, why, and wow. But no, we decided to mess it all wow. What am I supposed to be? Suspense? Wow, we freaking died. Like anyone gives a damn. All right, I think you just need to go. Yeah, you should just leave. Whatever. I don't want to be in your little polyamorous relationship anyway. I'm gonna go hang out with people that actually need my help.
¿Quién quiere? ¿Cuándo? ¿Quién? ¿Qué? ¿Cuándo? ¿Quiere? ¿Por qué? ¿Cómo?
I've been working on a new variant of the Smite support Scion. As you can see, I am playing with an Elise. She's starting on our blue side. I'm taking her Raptor Cam. This gives me an early level 2 and allows me to leg it over to the enemy blue side with a higher level. I place the ward into the blue brush and notice it's completely gone, which means that Hecarim actually smited that. There's no way he kills it in time, which makes it a free from steal. I pop my ghost, I'm running glacial, so I can easily kite him. There's no issue. I lower him enough that he's forced to back. Now the wolves are mine for the taking. And on my way back, I was going to take Elise's red side because Elise had decided to invade, but he got pushed off with the Ezreal, so the best option for me now is to go over and help deny the enemy red side. We can always go back and get our red anytime we want. I end up stealing this red for free. Hecarim's now sitting on only 1 cam, and things didn't really get much better from there. Subscribe/follow for more of this content. I've been working on a new variant of the Smite support Scion. As you can see, I am playing with an Elise. She's starting on our blue side. I'm taking her Raptor Cam. This gives me an early level 2 and allows me to leg it over to the enemy blue side with a higher level. I place the ward into the blue brush and notice it's completely gone, which means that Hecarim actually smited that. There's no way he kills it in time, which makes it a free from steal. I pop my ghost, I'm running
Oh God. I fell asleep.